Audio's on?
Yes.
Hi everyone. Are we live?
Yeah. Righty. Let's see. Okay.
Is
Yeah,
it-
we're live.
Yeah, it's on.
Hi, Anjum. Hello. I hope y'all can hear us.
I hope the video is good. I hope the audio is good.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll wait for
A few minutes.
a few minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so the live chat is on. Members. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. This is Aisha.
And this is Amreen.
And welcome to Reader Day Club. And this is very exciting because this is our first live stream doing
yeah.
something like this together. And I think this is the perfect way to end the year also, because we want to talk about what we read this year and the books that are kind of on our TBR
Yeah.
for next year.
Yeah. And I think it's a great idea,
Yeah.
long overdue as well,
Yeah.
obviously, because we get to talk about some of the best books that we read
Yeah.
this year, and also a few that we look forward to reading
Yeah.
in 2024.
Yeah.
Although we don't have a TBR list as such.
No,
Yeah.
we're very intuitive readers, so for us
Just a
it's
second. You can go on, it's okay.
So we're very intuitive readers. So for us, it's we don't usually keep a list. I have done that in the past. I've done that a couple of times, and it just hasn't worked out for me because I always read how I feel, based on how I feel. So for me, that's very important, and it's always worked in my favor. What about you guys? Do you all read? Do you all have a TBR, or do you all too read? Got a lot of people joining in.
Okay.
Great. Okay. So,
Yeah, how many books did you read this year?
I didn't read a lot of books because I stopped reading for 5-6 months in the middle. But, the ones that I did read, I remember them quite well because they're precisely because there were such few books. And yeah, what about you?
Well, I don't keep a count, so I did keep a count.
Yeah.
But I read quite a lot. Coincidentally, I think I picked up all short reads,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, even I took the break along with you for 6 months, where I read very little. But I think despite that, I read quite a lot.
Yeah.
Mm.
And any book that stands out? Any
Oh,
particular
yeah,
book?
so many. So I started this year with the War and Peace. Yes, I started the year with War and Peace. I finally read War and Peace this year, and in it, Tolstoy has described he's described human emotions and the narratives of so many different characters through so many different perspectives
Yeah.
so well that by the end of it, they start to feel familiar.
Yeah.
And I feel that the prose is full of descriptive imagery that it sort of stays with you.
Yeah.
And obviously the book is also very philosophical,
Yeah.
because the characters are philosophical,
Yeah.
because they think deeply about everything
Yeah.
and have these existential questions about life.
Yeah.
And just like most of our experiences, I think our first experiences, like, we never forget them. So I think I will always remember reading this book for the first time,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you think the same way.
Yeah. Firstly, sorry, that's our cat. She wants to go out of the room, and we're not letting her do that. So if you hear her in the background, she's trying to chime in the conversation. Yeah, but okay. So War and Peace. I read War and Peace for the first time in 2022. So at the start of 2022.
Someone says, Kaushal says, I did not complete even one book this year. It's fine. Believe me, it's fine.
I think this year was the year we learned that, I mean, I don't want to sound all abstract here, but because one of the reasons why we took a break from reading for 5 to 6 months this year was because we wanted to detach ourselves from this idea that we are readers, because we have been reading for a very long time, and it's good to sort of step out of your own head and the things that you think define you. So reading even one book a year, or just like not reading anything and just like picking out random things from books and pages and reflecting on those things
is more than enough.
Because
and even then, like, even if you don't feel like doing that, I think if you don't want to read, you don't read. I feel that it's not a compulsion. Because, and honestly, I am actually, the reason why I'm saying this because I feel that I think we always like to label ourselves as readers.
Exactly.
So
That's what
I'm a reader.
Yeah.
I'm a reader. So it just feels like, okay, what does that even mean after a point?
Like, it's your actions that make you who you are. So if in the moment, whether that lasts for a year, longer than a year, you don't read books the way you used to, that doesn't make you a bad reader or
not a reader anymore.
Yeah, so I feel like it's very flexible. Like, no feeling is final. I think Rilke said it.
Yeah, Rilke said
So just in that same way, no definition of yourself is final, and a lot of people.
Aditi is asking something.
Want to know about this Reader Club? Is this
a club for other people, and
you guys read books personally? We read books personally.
Yeah.
I think the idea of Reader Day Club started. It's been 5-6 years now, and it started as a way of just reminding ourselves to read and give that priority, because
I think a lot of people have an accountability partner.
Yes.
So I think after a point, Instagram and talking about books has shaped into that.
Later.
Yeah, it has shaped into that.
Yeah, like it holds us accountable, and even though we took a break from reading and Instagram even for like 6 months this year, it feels like such a short period of time. Like it didn't feel like 6 months.
We didn't read, believe me, at all for 6 months.
Like, I read essays, like philosophy essays, but even that was so fragmented, even that was so like stretched out to a point where it wasn't even reading. It was just, it became part of my routine.
But you read quite a thick book this year. You read Moby Dick, right? By Herman Melville.
Yeah, so my year started off with War and Peace 2, but the first time I read War and Peace was last year, beginning of last year. This is the Oxford World's Classics edition. I forget.
I read the same edition.
Yeah, you read the same one. And the second time around, I read the Penguins Classics. I think it's here. Yeah, this one. I read the Penguins Classics edition. So I didn't really like the second translation much. Like, it didn't move me. It felt really dry, and
the chat now.
Yeah, I know it's a distracting, but we'll answer to everyone's messages and questions.
Yes, Aditi, you can join our Patreon. We'll share the link with you in a bit.
Wait, let me do that right away. Yeah, so Reader Day Club, War and Peace for me was a very important experience, because I had always been intimidated by
thick books.
Just the sheer volume. Like, it's a thick book, like it's over 1,000 pages, and I have read Tolstoy has really researched his characters in the book. Like,
Tolstoy, no?
Tolstoy.
Oh yeah, you're talking about War and Peace.
Yes,
sorry.
Yeah, so it's just like books like that, and even Moby Dick, I always used to see them because those are some of the oldest books that we have, and I feel that with Moby Dick, what happened with me was I read Moby Dick. I also was listening to the audiobook alongside it, which a tape, it really helps, especially when you have to expose yourself to the pages after pages after pages of like dry descriptions of whales, and the audiobook really helped me. And right after that, I read Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. So in comparison to Moby Dick, it's just like 100 pages. But thematically, I feel like the way that Captain Ahab,
Sorry.
the way that Captain Ahab in Moby Dick sort of pursues the white whale, it mirrors the way that the protagonist of Heart of Darkness, Marlowe, sort of enters into the jungle of Africa,
Yeah.
and I mean, it just mirrors that idea that, it. I mean, of course, there is that man versus nature theme that is very prominent in both books, but it's also the way that both authors have described the darker aspects of human nature. So when you talk about greed, you talk about desire, you talk about morality. So I think you get that right from the start of Moby Dick, and I know this is not the experience that you had.
No, I didn't have this experience. I did not. I found the book very tedious,
Yeah.
honestly speaking, and it was also very repetitive.
Yeah, it is repetitive in parts.
Yeah,
That's why the audiobook
I
helps.
hate admitting it. I mean, I hate admitting the fact that I did not like the book, but I think it boils down to just
Your
me-
state of mind.
Yeah, my state of mind.
Yeah.
Me not being in the right
Yeah.
mood, in the right frame of mind to read the book. So I don't think I did justice there.
Yeah, and I feel like this happened with me and War and Peace actually. In 2021, I think, I picked up War and Peace, read 100 pages. This is the Oxford
Yeah,
World's
I remember.
Classics,
Yeah.
and I couldn't tell you what was happening, and this was 2-3 years back. And cut to the start of last year, I was hooked from the first page itself. So it changes, your mood changes,
Yeah,
your reading
yeah.
preferences change, and
But what's happened with me and Moby Dick now is that not that I'm afraid to pick it up or anything. I
Yeah.
just feel I'm actually a little intimidated by the book. But at the same time, I feel that I will not have a good time with the book.
yeah.
Also because it's a big commitment. It's so huge.
You think it is, but once you start reading it, time is relative. I mean,
Well, yeah, true. It's like
once you, I
it's
mean, the
like
same-
reading multiple books only, but here
Exactly.
you're just reading one book.
Yeah, but I can never read multiple books. at
No,
a
no,
time.
even I can never read
Like
multiple
at the
books.
same time, you.
Ha ha ha. Yeah.
So somebody is asking, all right, Dishnu, what about the page Film a Day Club? Okay, so Film a Day Club, I remember.
It's still active?
No, it's not active.
It's not active.
I deleted it a while ago.
Why did you
And-
delete it?
I mean,
I didn't even know that.
yeah, it was a while ago I deleted it, and I was just feeling bad that I wasn't posting anything on it, and I didn't want that
I
reminder.
remember I told you not to delete
Yeah.
it. Okay.
But
yes,
all the reviews, like all the stuff that I have posted, like all the films I mention and I speak about them, they are on the website.
Achha, they're on the website.
They're on the website.
Okay, I had no idea.
Yeah. I read a lot of Cormac McCarthy. That was the highlight. You have a favorite? I have only read one Cormac, which is Blood Meridian.
I did not like it.
You didn't like it?
Not so much, no.
Why? I don't know. I
I-
think maybe you didn't find it relatable in the sense
Yes,
that.
I didn't. It's not that I thought it was badly written. Of
Yeah.
course not. It's a very well written book, but
Yeah.
I didn't connect with the book
Like
at all.
I found the book to be very gritty, so that worked in my favor because I like gritty books, and I mean I do talk about this a bit later, but it's just that reading challenging books feels a lot like exercising for me personally. So
It's a very rewarding experience
Yeah.
because I remember the first time I read Franz Kafka, I didn't understand a single word in
which
that
one,
book.
the trial or Metamorphosis?
No, I read. No, I understood Metamorphosis.
Yeah.
I did not understand the
Trial.
Castle.
The Castle. Okay,
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think I finished the book halfway and then I started reading it all over again.
Yeah.
And that helped a little bit. But by the time I reached the end of the book and the book has no end,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm grateful for having
Read it.
read it.
Yeah.
Even though I must have understood maybe like 60 to 70% of the
Yeah.
book.
And I feel like you can't really put yourself, you can't expect a lot from yourself when you read a book for the first time, especially when you talk about classics, when you talk about books that are like I can think of even Virginia Woolf, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Like the first time I read Virginia Woolf versus maybe the third or fourth time I read Mrs. Dalloway
Yeah.
and the Lighthouse, and it's contrastingly different.
Yeah.
The first time you read a book, it's just, I mean, it's very hard to describe really what that experience, what it feels like, but you can't understand the entirety of
A book. Any book.
Because there are so
when
many
you read it for the
perspectives.
first time. Yeah.
There's so many perspectives to a seemingly simple story,
Yeah.
and the more you spend time with it, the more there is to
Yeah,
uncover.
I think the same thing happened with me this year when I read Bahumul Rabal's Too Louder Solitude.
Yeah.
And you know, this book, not many people will tell you, is actually it's a very funny story, and it's not LOL funny, but it's quite an amusing read.
Yeah.
And it's basically about a man manually working a hydraulic press in
Yeah.
an isolated basement. So what he does for a living is he destroys precious books. But the perks of doing that is he gets access to a lot of good books which he loves
That
to
have been
read.
discarded.
Yeah, so I think the irony in that is what's so funny.
Yeah.
I guess. Okay, so yeah,
Even his tone of, like, the narrative style of the story,
yeah.
it's quite ironic and it's quite humorous if you read it that way.
Yes, yeah, it is,
Yeah.
yeah. So what happens is he rescues these books and he takes them back to his teeny tiny dingy apartment.
Yeah.
Everything's dingy, everything's rotten, except for the hordes of books that he
yeah.
manages to save from extinction.
Yeah.
And
And the rats.
and the beer bottles.
And the beer
yeah,
bottles.
there are a lot
There's
of
so
rats
many beer
and there are a
I
lot
don't
of
know,
beer
I
bottles.
somehow visualize, when I think of Too Louder Solitude, I can hear clinking of beer bottles.
Yeah.
Because he's described them so much,
Yeah,
and there's so
yeah.
many rats. He is a house of rats
Yeah,
in between
yeah.
all those columns of books and stacks
It
of
actually
books.
reminded me of George Orwell's 1984. It
Hmm.
has that dystopian vibe to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also that there's always something lurking beneath the surface.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it speaks to a larger and a
Hmm,
broader
hmm.
theme than just what's on the page.
Yeah, yeah.
You read, I think.
I read Ismail Chughta's Life
After-
of
right
Words
after
after
this,
this.
yeah.
It's about, in the book, she talks about her childhood. This is Ismail Chughta's Life in Words.
Life in Words.
Life in Words, yeah. So she talks about her childhood and what it's like to grow up in
Mm.
an Orthodox society.
Yeah.
She is obviously, I think most people know, she's one of the most prominent Urdu writers and one of the very few 20th century Indian female authors.
Hmm.
And I think that she has written some of the most deeply moving stories.
Yeah.
Her short stories in particular are works of art.
Yeah.
As for this one,
Lifting
Life
the
in
Veil,
Words, yeah.
the
As
collection.
for Life in Words, it's a memoir, and after reading this, you come to understand why she was so fearless
Yeah.
and so rebellious through her writing.
Yeah. And I mean, I've read Lifting the Veil, I've read some of her stories, and I mean,
Thoughts on Manto.
they do have that fearless edge to them,
Mm.
very provocative and very controversial. And this just brings us, to the next book. But before that, let's see if we can.
Thoughts
answer-
on Manto.
Thoughts on Manto. Manto's, I have his collection of books, Bitter Fruit, but
Bittersweet Fruit, I think. Yeah.
Bittersweet Fruit? No, Bitter Fruit.
Bitter Fruit.
And I haven't yet read Manto, but I have read a few things about him online.
Yeah.
And
Few, I think you've read quite a lot about
yeah.
Manto online.
And really, and I think next year, like, because we're discussing TBR for 2024, I want to read a lot of lyrical prose, and which includes Reina Maria Rilke as well. And
I hope the audio is fine.
yeah.
My cat is
messing
going
around with the
Uno,
wire.
stop it. Go sit on the bed.
Okay, So, your
So where were we?
thoughts about Murakami, your favorite edition of classics? No favorite edition really. Even though it might seem like we're contradicting ourselves because we have all the white penguins, the blue and the black, but it depends on availability for us. Like if there's a book I see and I know I want to read it, I buy it. Although this year we have been on a complete book buying ban, at least for the second half. Second half of this year, because I tend to go a little overboard when it comes to buying books, and I need to like police myself, keep myself in check. Like, so we don't really have a favorite edition. Really, it depends on availability. Sometimes most of the books actually that we have purchased, we have had to purchase it through Amazon because they are not available
in bookstores.
bookstores. And I think this
in Bombay.
and I try to buy books offline as much as I can, but it's just difficult to find the kind of books that we read in bookstores. I remember once we spent 3 to 4 hours at a bookstore.
Which one?
I think this was Kitab Khana, or
3 to 4 hours.
at least 3 hours. I remember we were no, this was Grant at Juhu.
There we've spent
we've
a lot of time.
a lot of time trying to find a
search
good
for
book.
books, yeah.
And we came out with Henry David Thoreau's essays, and yeah. Where were we?
Which book were you talking about? We were talking about Manto. I spoke about Life in Words.
So I wanted to talk about
Dream Story, I think,
Story,
yeah.
Yes. So I read this book a couple of weeks ago, and because you mentioned Insma Chugta and her provocative writing, it just reminded me of Dream Story, because I mean, it's, where do I even begin with this book?
It's the one that's adapted by Stanley Kubrick, right?
Eyes Wide Shut.
Eyes Wide Shut.
That just makes me sad because I wish I had read the book first before watching the film, but never mind. I mean, I can say the same about the other. I forget the director's name. The
Which
piano
one?
teacher.
Yeah. I had no idea it was based. It was an adaptation. I wonder if the film is more disturbing or the book. I think the book would be more disturbing. The piano teacher.
Yeah. So
We should rewatch it. It's been a while.
how long has it been?
A year? I think less than a year.
Yeah.
No, stop it.
Okay. So
Is the audio fine? I hope it's fine.
yeah.
It's fine.
So, Dream Story. Okay. Now this story, this book has no beginning and no end. So whatever is in between is just like a vividly detailed and bizarre experience, much like a dream. But what I liked at the same time is that Schnitzler describes human emotions and human feelings in a very realistic manner. So there is realism as well as like that dreamlike quality to it. So it's constantly going back and forth between those two, parallels
Narratives,
and
yeah.
those two narratives. And because I read Moby Dick this year, much earlier, I can't, like, it was very easy for me to draw that comparison because Moby Dick is like a journey at sea, Heart of Darkness is journey into the jungle. So Dream Story can be read like a journey too, only that the book explores the subconscious mind when you talk about themes of desire, repressed, repressed desire, suppressed desires, fantasies, and even like it's a very sensual story.
Yeah.
And the book is a lot more sensual than the film.
I remember the scene from the film Eyes Wide Shut. Tom Cruise with Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, this
I think
was at the
they
start of the film.
Yeah, I think they come back from a party and
They get high and then
they get high and
and
they
she
talk
starts
about
talking about her
infidelity.
Yeah, like she
Infidel, yeah.
describes a fantasy that she had
Yeah.
back when they were vacationing.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I found that very interesting.
Yeah, and that same scene, like it's the film is exactly like the book. Film is exactly like the book, and but I mean,
I think the book must have more depth than the film, you think?
No,
I think Stanley Kubrick did
it's fair play.
Yeah, I think he
fair
did a
enough
brilliant job
because
adapting the book.
it's just the book is so dark and it's open to interpretation. Like there are so many different ways you can interpret the ending of the book. The ending of the book is just as ambiguous as the start of the book.
Okay.
So there's no like finality to it, which is
so
what I like.
pretty much like The Blind Owl by Sadiq
Yes.
Hidayat, which is
Yes.
also one of the books that I read this
Yeah.
year. And now
It's people are. This is a petition to free Uno. Okay.
but this is how she behaves in the
Yes.
afternoon.
Yeah, this is her. It's supposed to be her nap time, but it's somehow she's all riled up this afternoon. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so I remember reading Blind Owl. I remember reading the book, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I read that book in a very I was going through a bad phase. I think this whole year I was going through a bad phase, and I read all my books in such a horrible mood. But still, I remember it. Now, what happens in this book is, now I remember we picked up the book because it said at the back of the book that his writing explores the dark recesses of the human psyche.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I had such a good time with the novel. It's about a man, rather a tortured soul, narrating the the unfolding or the happenings, the experiences of his life, which is plagued by its what is it? Disease, death,
Yeah.
delusion,
Decay.
there's deception. So now the different characters in this book can be interpreted as his different shadow selves or not. How you perceive it is entirely up to you. And just like that, the passing of time and what death and decay symbolize is also open to multiple interpretations.
Yeah.
And by the time you reach the end of the book, you will not be able to reach any one solid conclusion.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of Hidayat's novel.
Yeah.
That
I
it's
think
so ambiguous.
I like stories
like that, yeah.
I like that
Even in
there is-
films,
Yeah,
even in
like
films.
there is no there's no finality in a sense that there is no conclusive ending to a film. It depends on the viewer and how they interpret it
Yeah.
based on what they're feeling, what they assume, what they perceive in the film, and it changes every time.
Yeah.
Like it's just you speaking about decay
Blinder.
and death
Yeah.
and disease just reminded me of the book that I finished reading very recently. This is, I think, this is right after I finished reading Dream Story. So that is Hunger by No Thompson,
Okay.
It's a Norwegian author, and this book reads like a complete existential nightmare. So the story follows an unnamed young writer in Oslo, and he's struggling with poverty, he's struggling with starvation, and descending into like complete chaos as a consequence of that. And I deeply enjoy reading stream of consciousness narrative styles in books. So in this book, following that same style, you're just like thrown into the inner workings of such madness and constantly, so which is very interesting to read. And another thing that really stood out for me in this book is the way that hunger has been used as a theme to not only point to the biological
Aspect of it,
what hunger is, but also like the intellectual and emotional aspects of it.
Doesn't that sound too lofty?
It sounds lofty, but it doesn't read lofty because the book is, again, it's a work of realism. It's very realistic, it's very gritty, it's very coarse. Has anyone watched the Mike Lee's film Naked? So if you guys have watched that film, you all will understand, and you all will definitely like find a lot of similarities between that. I mean, we watched that film together, and it's much like the book. I mean, it's too close. Like the comparison is very close, and no, it's not lofty. It sounds like it,
Yeah.
but it's because when you read it, you understand that it's hunger as an experience is very nuanced. So when it also reminds me of Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, because even in that book there is that, if not an explicit mention of deprivation and a lack of something, but you can definitely sense it. It's more atmospheric, and I think even I can say the same for Too Loud a Solitude, because he's living such a low, you know,
he's always sick.
He's so deprived of comfort and any sort of luxury. So the atmospheric, it has a very how should I say this? It has a very transcendental effect on you, wherein you sort of rise above what is on the page, and you're able to really get into the psyche of the character, because you're seeing the narration of, like, the stream of consciousness narration style is such that you are stepping out of your own comfort zone into someone else's, and if that in itself is chaotic and gritty, you can't help but fall to those intellectual, emotional and mental capabilities, because you are because you're deprived of physical ones, right? No food, no water, poverty, and I can go on and on about this, but it's
evidently
so it's
the book actually that I want to talk about next is just the opposite of what you're describing. It's Seneca's Letters from a Stoic. And whether you've read philosophy or not, it doesn't matter, because this book is for everyone. And so basically it's a collection of essays that Seneca writes, that they exchange, right? Seneca exchanges with his friend, where they talk very intimately about what is a good life, what is simple living, how to deal with the sorrows and difficulties that life throws at you. And the next book along the same lines is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Now, this book brought me a lot of comfort and clarity. I remember at times, it's such a strange coincidence that you mentioned this. I read somewhere, I heard, I don't remember. I think I read this in an article on the Margin Alien. Now, Adam Phillips, the author of Missing Out.
It's brain pickings.
The author of Missing Out. In
Adam
praise
Phillips.
of so he says that only when hunger is satiated do you realize that you are hungry. So for me, Man's Search for Meaning was like that. Only when it gave me clarity did I realize that I needed some help there. And that's exactly what happened with me.
And Man's Search for Meaning is also one of the oldest books that we've had.
For years. We've had it. Even you read it this year, I read it this year.
Spoke to you about it,
and then I immediately
picked it up right away.
And in the book, he has described meaning so well. Like, it's not like I remember him explaining in the book that meaning is such a subjective thing, and not some it's not some lofty, profound or abstract understanding, perception or anything of that sort.
And you really break it down to the roots. So the roots being like the human experience, and how you experience knowledge, and how you act out those definitions that you have in your head. And I really like books like that. I mean, I started off with a lot of lofty philosophy, and then I slowly narrowed down my choices, and now I've reached a point where I will talk about this because I have a very
the horrors of philosophy.
But you finish your
so Viktor Frankl talks about his experience of living in a concentration camp. He even quotes Nietzsche. What's the quote? He who has a why to live for can bear with almost anyhow. Both of us remember that. I didn't expect this book to have such an impact on me, and it did. And I think I read the first or the second half of the book twice.
I think you read the first half.
I read the first half of the book twice. And I would recommend this book to anybody at every or any stage in life. Exactly like I said, like only when your hunger is satiated do you realize you were hungry. And books like these do that to you. Do we have any questions that you want to answer before we move on?
Do you have any suggestions on how to start reading Freud? Okay, so
Freud.
I have 2 books of his. First is The Penguin Reader. It should be somewhere here. I don't.
That's
see it.
okay.
Yeah, so I
Just
have his
recommend it.
Penguin Reader, which is a collection of his essays. So I dipped in and out of those essays before I went ahead and read The Interpretation of Dreams. And I still to this day haven't finished Interpretation of Dreams completely, because it's a very, I mean, even though it looks like a small read, it's a very dense book. And I'm still going back and forth between his essays, which is the Penguin edition, to reading Interpretation of Dreams. And I'm taking my time. Like certain writers, I read constantly. Like I don't. Okay, there's no big start time and then there's no end time. I'm always perpetually reading them. I may not pick them up every day. Like I may not read Freud every day, but it's
You read
always at the
certain-
back of my mind. And I'm always.
I think I have that sort of a relationship with Carl Jung.
Yeah. Yeah, I think someone asked something about Carl Jung as well. Tips for reading Carl Jung. Just read Carl Jung. I mean, tips, there aren't no tips, because for us,
I think
with 4 Archetypes was the first Carl Jung book I read.
I read
Think
Man and His Symbols.
Yeah.
I read Man and His Symbols
This one
first.
is the book. This is the first Carl Jung I read, and I mean, even though I understood just a fraction of it, it still did something. Like it shifted something in me, and that is all you need to get started when it comes to philosophy and psychology. You don't need to understand 100% of the book. You don't need to be able to ask questions and answer them like as though somebody is quizzing you about the book you've read. Because come on, if you are coming from a non-academic background, which is exactly the case with us, reading philosophy and psychology is like training a muscle. It's going to take time.
Some time.
It's not going to happen overnight. So I think when it comes to reading Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, it's best
Freud is more complicated than Carl Jung.
Yeah, like
Carl Jung, I think, was a good writer as well. And
I was just going to say that.
Freud was not a good writer.
He wrote very articulately.
Yeah.
But in terms of like creating a story, I would say more or less, like Carl Jung does it better than Sigmund Freud. And
that's why it's much easier to understand Jung's work and all the stuff that he's written. And it's
Sigmund Freud is he wants
very dense.
Yeah, he's a very demanding writer.
Yeah,
like he asks a lot of you, and if you're interested in that kind of literature, that effort is not even an effort anymore. It doesn't feel like effort. I've spent hours going down the rabbit hole of some of his essays and coming out with just like
a fraction,
beginner level understanding of what it is that I went down, and I spent hours. They've just disappeared and vanished.
I don't have the patience to do that.
No,
I don't
enjoy it.
I don't think I can
really
ever do that.
Like I always tell you that I'm a better writer than I am a speaker, and it is because of writers like Carl Jung, and Sigmund Freud, even Hannah Arendt, as a matter of fact, Life of the Mind. And even Iris Murdoch, she wrote, I think, Existentialists and Mystics. Yeah. So I feel like they made me a better writer, and it's only now that I'm realizing, because of a lot of reasons, I'm realizing that I want to be a better speaker too. Yeah. I want to sort of bridge that gap between those two things. I think Kafka said that, what was that quote?
Something to do with an axe?
No. That is something else.
That is another
Frozen
one.
Axe.
Frozen Sea or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So books are the Frozen Axe or something. I'm completely butchering the quote. But I mean, I think better than I write, and I write better than I speak. So I think Kafka said something along those lines. And so yeah, when it comes to reading Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, just read them. Eventually you'll find your own pace, you'll find your own rhythm, you'll find your own awareness, and you'll grow from that point. With which books should I start reading? Virginia Woolf. My first Virginia Woolf was Mrs. Dalloway. Then I went to A Room of One's Own, and then I read To the Lighthouse, Orlando. Orlando is a great book.
I mean, still have to read that. I read To the Lighthouse, and that is also
like a lot of people recommend reading Mrs. Dalloway, A Room of One's Own, and To the Lighthouse, but I would recommend reading Orlando first.
Okay.
Especially in today's day and age, I feel like it is so relevant because it's really relevant to read Orlando, and I can't wait for you to read the book so that we can watch the adaptation with Tilda Swinton. And yeah, do you have a favorite Carl Jung? Oh, do I have a favorite Carl Jung?
Do I have a favorite?
It's difficult.
I never thought about this actually. I think I would say Man and His Symbol.
I'm torn between Four Archetypes and
Four Archetypes is my least favorite Carl Jung.
Really?
Yeah.
Man's Search for Meaning is also a good book.
Yeah,
Man's Search for Meaning. That one is good. Magic Mountain was a massive highlight, but also so sad. Magic Mountain. I want to read Magic Mountain, primarily because I think it was in Norwegian Wood that the main character was reading Magic Mountain, if I'm not wrong. So whenever I see that book next, I'm definitely going to pick it up for next year to read.
We've never spotted that book anywhere, have we?
I think in White Crow we have.
Achha, we've seen it. Okay.
So, okay. So, alright. Do you have any other book I'm reading this year?
Yes, I have another dark and depressing book recommendation. The Sorrows of Young Werther by Goethe. Now, I don't recommend this book to everyone, unlike Man's Search for Meaning and Seneca's Letters from a Stoic.
Yeah.
This book must be read with caution.
Caution is, it's not even cutting it, like this book.
But if you're anything like me or us, which is quite evident right now, you will truly enjoy this novel. And most part of the novel is all Werther. It's his voice, it's his narration, it's his side of the story, his side of a love obsession to the point of self-destruction.
Yeah.
Now this character is so negative, is so nihilistic, and he's so self-involved, but that allowed me to sort of distance myself from my own negative thoughts.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Yeah.
It happens with books, and I'm so glad I read it at the time that I read it, because it gives you that space to stop in your tracks and maybe reevaluate.
Yeah, like I mean, a book like that, Sorrows of Young Werther, and also I would mention your Fernando Pessoa's Book of Disquiet, because I saw the name pop up in the chat somewhere, and Ishika said that the Book of Disquiet. I think books like these force you to look at yourself as the object of your own life.
Yes, that's exactly what happened with me.
Not the subject, and not someone to whom things are happening, but somebody who is making things happen. And that's not a very comfortable place to be in, because you end up having to confront a lot of things you'd rather not. And
a lot of people say that when you're in a bad mood or when your mind is chaotic, you should stay away from such sad and depressing reads. But with me, in my case, I feel that when I am feeling low and I read these books, I feel so honestly, I don't feel happy, but I do feel a sense of comfort that
they soothe you.
So I'm not the only one thinking such
like
dark
I said,
thoughts.
Like they force you to look at yourself.
Yeah.
Which is something that
it's
don't
scary.
do.
Yes,
it's
of course it's scary,
but also that much of our daily living, we are so involved in doing things that we don't have that. We don't, sort of cultivate that
awareness
to stop and just look at yourself,
Yeah.
in your actions, in your thoughts, in your
Hmm.
intentions.
Hmm.
And Book of Disquiet, then which book were you referring to?
Sorrows of Young
Sorrows
Werther.
of Young Werther. All these books, like these kinds of books, do that. So when you're feeling, and even I don't know, I'm just thinking of Arthur Schopenhauer's On the Suffering of the World, the essay.
Yeah.
I mean, I read that book, I read that essay, have read that essay so many times in
Multiple
my
times,
life,
same here.
at different stages of my
Hmm.
life, and it just makes sense, because how else and why else would you read literature like
Yeah.
this?
And
You
it's
know?
also, I think, as a reader, what we have to do, what we should do when we're reading such books, and we feel so strongly about them, or maybe they're a little dark and gloomy, is to read between the lines.
Yeah.
Like, I can never read a book without reading between the lines.
No.
I have to do that, because as a reader, I think you have to look beneath and beyond that.
Yeah.
And I think this also means that if you're a good non-fiction reader, you will understand characters like Werther
Yeah.
even better.
Yeah, and I
Because
was
you
going
know,
to say
yeah,
that.
because you know why he's sad, or maybe if it's not evident in the book, you have to read between the lines and you have to understand that. And as long as there is a why to the sadness, to the anxiety,
Whether or
would-
not
yeah.
you agree with that why,
Yeah, of course.
it's a very, I feel it's a discipline. It makes you very disciplined in life in general, if you are able to objectively observe a character's beingness in a story.
Yeah.
And that makes
Any questions?
any questions? Are you guys friends or sisters? Neha, we are sisters, but we are not twins. A lot of people ask. I remember a few times we've been out together and somebody asked us, "Are you all twins?" No, we're not twins. We're 6 years apart, and yeah, definitely. Well, we are friends too. I mean, those two words go synonymous to each other. Thoughts on Desai? I've only read
Yes.
No Longer Human. You're currently reading No Longer Human, and I read this book 3.
He is one of the most disturbing, alienated, and anxious character I have ever read.
Yeah.
And I just love that. I love that
I feel
about
like
him.
that the whole the way I think our other cat is making noise outside.
That's okay. That's
fine.
Yeah.
It's just that the whole idea of wearing a mask in society,
Because of COVID.
because of okay, so this is the usual us. I start talking about something serious or say something grim, and then she comes in and she starts cracking jokes. Okay, so mangas, chess players make you feel seen. Yes, they do make you feel seen when you read books like No Longer Human.
Yeah.
When you read
Yeah.
Fernando Pessoa, when you read philosophers, when you read existential books, they do make you feel seen. And I think
that's why we read.
yeah, that is
Yeah,
why we
I
read.
think that's why we read.
I
All
feel
of us
James
actually.
Baldwin said that you think you're alone in this world until you read.
Yeah.
So you know that commonality, that universality that books give you and films give you is something that is just unparalleled. Like you just cannot compare. And now, speaking of gritty books, I want to talk about my next 3 books on my TBR
On your
list.
TBR.
But and
You're starting your TBR list, and I'm still stuck on my
yes.
best books of the year. I think the last one I wanted to talk about was Snow Country by Yasunari Kawabata. And now this book is on my list because I really like the name of the protagonist, Shimamura.
Shimamura.
Yes.
It's such a Japanese
Yeah,
thing.
of course. I think if you are drawn to Japanese literature, you must read this book. Yeah, this is a must read. Now you can go on with your TBR.
Okay, so I have Eugene Thacker's Horrors of Philosophy. Okay, so before all the recommendations, all the books we're talking about will be, I will be making a list of them, and I will be posting that on Instagram as Insta stories.
Yeah.
And yes, there is a plan to publish this live as well, but we're not so sure about that yet. But we will. It
Yeah.
is in the works.
Yeah.
We might make a few edits here and there, but the chat and the video will be available. So if you guys want to watch it and want to refer to it, you all can message us on Instagram, and I'll definitely share the link there. But I don't think it will be public, but it will just be available through that link itself. So
Yeah,
let
to
us
whoever
know that.
wants to see it.
Yeah, so
Whoever wants to
definitely
watch,
let
yeah.
us know. Yeah, so horrors of philosophy. Now I found about horrors of philosophy Eugene Thacker. So it's a trilogy. I found out about him after reading The Call of Cthulhu,
H.P.
Lovecraft, and even Thomas Ligotti's The Conspiracy Against Human Nature.
It's such a shame that I haven't read the second one.
Yeah,
Thomas
Conspiracy. Yeah,
Ligot. Yeah, I
I
have
even
to. I
have
have to. I think I should end the year on that note.
this year.
Yeah, I should end the year on that. But it's a short read.
It's a short
yeah,
read.
It's not a
Yes.
thick book.
It's like The Denial of Death, Ernest Becker.
Yeah.
Like, so it has that, and so does Horrors of Philosophy trilogy. So basically, it's really interesting because the it explores the philosophy of horror, not only as like a figment of human imagination, but also when you think about philosophical concepts like nihilism, existentialism, and why they can be scary for somebody, but also necessary, like roads to walk on, terrifying at the same time. So there is an element of cosmic horror
Okay.
in his writing. Like, he interprets it as that, and I would like to read all three horrors of philosophy, and then go back to reading Lovecraft, and then go back to reading Edgar Allan Poe, and sort of pluck out and play around with a
Yeah.
few different things than what I interpreted the first time. And I think reading such challenging books for me feels a lot like when I'm exercising. So there is a certain degree of friction and discomfort involved in the process, but it's rewarding at the same time.
She wants food.
Should I give her?
Yeah, you can give. No, actually no.
No?
Don't do
It's
that.
fine?
Don't give her. It's not food time, me. Okay. Sorry. Continue.
I think I was done.
Okay, so my TBR list. I am actually planning on picking up some unusual books this year, and I say unusual because I don't normally pick up these kinds of books, and I really like what you said about reading books that I don't know, evoke some sort of
There
friction,
is a degree of friction
and discomfort.
involved.
Yeah, so
Somebody said, Anjum, exercising and reading. Yes, I would like to point out here, I finished reading Murakami's What I Talk About When I Talk About Running last night. And even then, even in that book, he makes that connection between why he runs and why he writes, and how both, sort of coexist parallel to each other, and they sort of complement each other. And I really related to that because I love exercising, and I know I am only pushing myself when I feel that friction and discomfort, and that means that there is room to grow there. And I feel I can relate that same kind of philosophy or mindset to reading, and that's why I sort of read books like Horrors of Philosophy and Book of Disquiet, because I don't like to be in my comfort zone, at least to a certain degree, and I let films and books challenge me on that level. Anyway, continue.
So, what was I saying? Yeah, so first one is actually a bit complicated. I have Jacques Lacan's The Four Fundamental Concepts of Psychoanalysis. Now, those who mentioned Freud and Carl Jung must know about this, and I don't know if you guys have read it or not. And then the other book is written by Roberto Harari, if I'm not wrong, on Lacan's Four Fundamental Concepts of Psychoanalysis.
Oh, so it's like an interpretation or introduction.
Yeah, it's like an introduction. It appeals to a wider audience and not just those interested in psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
And what led me to these books is actually this quote that I read on I think Brain Pickings.
Okay.
But what Freud showed us was nothing can be grasped, destroyed, or burnt. except in a symbolic way, as one says, in effigy, in absentia. So it's very interesting. And actually, the book is in French because Jacques Lacan was known as the French Freud.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we can actually read it in French also,
Ah.
which would be very interesting.
Okay.
Then there is No Exit and Three Other Plays by Jean-Paul Sartre.
Also French.
Also French,
Clearly
yes.
there's a theme here.
There's a theme here. So now, because I want to read this book, because I haven't read plays in a while, and
Which was the last?
The last play,
Chekhov?
I think Chekhov or Shakespeare. I think Chekhov, yeah. And I haven't also read Sartre in a while. The last Sartre I read was in 2021, I guess.
Yeah.
And a play by Sartre, I've never read. No. Then there's Dune by Frank Herbert, for obvious reasons.
This is such an unusual pick.
Yeah,
for you.
I mean, sci-fi films, hell yes. But when it comes to books, not so much.
Yeah.
Not so much. Yeah.
And it's only because the second part of
second
Dune
part is releasing in
that
March that I want to read
Yeah.
the book. And I had no idea there were like 6, 7 in
I
the
think six,
series.
yeah.
I thought, honestly speaking, I thought there was just the one.
Yeah.
So let's read the first one and then see if I want to read the other two. But no, but
It is
No,
interesting.
I will. I think I will want to read
It is very interesting.
It's not the genre I usually pick, actually. Then we have manga as well that I want to
Somebody
read.
asked about manga recommendations.
Uzumaki by Junji Ito.
Yes.
I need to read more mangas in 2024.
Good night, Pun Pun.
Yeah, I'm actually.
Good night, Pun Pun. You know, this is hilarious. This is so funny. I don't know whether it's Pun Pun or Pun Pun.
In your video, you say Pan Pan, right?
I don't know. I
Well,
have checked the correct pronunciation a million times.
You have to
and
say
I
it
always
twice,
forget.
right? It's good night Pan Pan. So you can
Right.
say both. You can say good night Pan Pun or Pun. Sorry. So anyway,
Clearly.
I also want to start reading more manga this year. I'm actually a very stubborn person, I am so used to reading my books in a certain type of format, of a certain type, I don't know, genre as well, that when something changes, I feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I know that I started reading fiction, and it took me a very long time to
Break out of your shell.
break out of my shell to read non-fiction. And now the same thing's happening with I've read classics, I've read psychology, philosophy, and now I want to read a little bit of sci-fi. I want to read more manga, and there's a lot of friction in my brain.
Yeah.
There's a lot
You
of friction.
also spoke about wanting to read The Call of Cthulhu
Yes,
by Lovecraft.
By Lovecraft, yes. Yeah.
Although if the way I read Lovecraft
No,
was
nobody wants to know the way you read. Every time I want to read a book and it is slightly complicated, or maybe she has read about it, or she'll always be like, no, first read this book, then read this book, and
that's what
then
I
read the book
do.
that you actually want to read. Nobody, wo nahi chahiye. Nobody wants that.
That is what I do, and it just makes the experience so much better.
Yeah,
but
of
again,
course, it does,
everybody's
it does.
reading journey is different.
And I think I'm a slightly, you would not be a lazy reader. I think I would call myself a
Why would
lazy
you? I don't
reader,
think you're a
because
lazy
no,
reader.
because I think that because before you start any book, there's so much that you read about the book,
Yeah.
and even when you're reading about
But I'm
these
letting
books,
go of that habit now.
okay, but it's
Like,
not a bad habit.
It's not a bad habit, but I have read certain
like she has to prepare herself
yeah.
for the book.
And it comes
Which
to
is
me
good.
very naturally.
Yeah,
It comes to me very naturally.
yeah.
Like I have never.
So in that sense, I feel like I'm a lazy reader. I don't do all of that. I mean, I do some of it,
Or
especially
maybe you
when I'm
don't
interested.
do it because I do it for you on
That could
behalf
be.
of you.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I tend to talk a lot about
about
what I
books and
read
authors and
and
everything.
you're more introspective that way. Like you process your thoughts first and then you talk to me about them.
Someone said, "Good night, Pan Pan is boring, depressing for no
Vishnu.
specific reason. Felt I was wasting my time."
I get it. I definitely get it.
Really?
It is depressing. But again, when you read psychology,
Okay.
and philosophy, you can definitely have that distant perspective, that detached perspective on an intense manga like Goodnight Pan Pan. And I mean, psychology specifically has really helped me penetrate that aspect of that sheath of
Yeah.
literature really well. And and there's just a lot more to explore. Like, it's never enough.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like it's the more you know, the more you know that you don't know.
Yeah.
So
Someone said that.
yeah, so for me that is really important. And okay, so it has been 60 minutes, I think. Has it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been 60 minutes. Okay, so I'll quickly talk about my last TBR. Yeah, you're done,
I'm
right?
done with my TBR.
Okay. So
my very ambitious list.
yes, not really though.
I was being sarcastic.
Okay, because compared to the kind of lists we have, the lists
We've
and
had
books
in the past.
this
Yeah.
is nothing. And so anyway, I recently read Khalil Gibran, and specifically The Madman, and somehow his words reminded me a lot of Raina Maria Rilke. I do mention both of them in my latest video, and this is that they both write so vividly about existential and spiritual themes. So comparing the way that Khalil Gibran wrote about life, spirituality, and time, and just the fleetingness of time, it just reminded me of Rilke. Although I find a lot more to relate to in Rilke's words, because Khalil Gibran's words do sort of slowly but surely flow into the mystical realm of prose, and that's something that I just don't resonate with. So my goal, hopefully, is to be able to read at least all of Rilke next year, and just to be able to draw those parallels between Khalil
both,
Gibran and Rilke.
Yeah.
And poetry too. Like we don't read.
We don't read poetry. No.
We don't read poetry, but the poetry that we do
The only
read,
time I read
Emily Dickinson. I saw the collection of Samuel Beckett also.
Yeah, that I wanted to buy.
Then I read Charles Bukowski this year. I did a video about him, and was completely blown away by his writings. And I came from a very biased, I would say I came from a very judgmental standpoint, and then when I started reading his writing, it just broke that perspective for me, and it was amazing. Like, reading Bukowski this year was also a highlight of my life, because I was always under this impression that he just wrote about certain topics in a very vulgar and annoying manner. But then when I actually read his poems, when I actually read about his life and his Hammond Dry Post Office and women, it just blew my mind away. So, all right.
Any questions?
I think that's about it. Do you think?
Loved the video on Charles Bukowski. Convinced me to put it on my TBR. Yeah.
Similar writers from Bukowski. Yes, his poems are hilarious. It's so many. I have read You Get So Alone at Times That It Just Makes Sense, and Love is a Dog from Hell. I mean, the title itself, Love is a Dog from Hell, like, Bukowski is just something else on me, and I'm really glad that I read him, and I can't wait to.
I actually read his books.
You didn't read his poems first.
No,
you read
I haven't. I read his novels first. I read Post Office, then I read Hammond Dry, and then I read Women.
Yeah.
Hammond Dry is just, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That novel is heartbreaking.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So it has been over an hour, and thank you so much for everybody who is here and has. I would say, I don't want to use that word, it's too strong a word, but tolerated us for the last 60 minutes because this was not planned. This is just right off the bat. We decided to talk about it, and Uno, our cat, decided to give us company along the way as well. And and I'm just reading, I'm just getting distracted by all the messages. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I would just like to mention, and I am saying this because I saw a few thumbnails on YouTube this morning about how to become a better reader in 2024, how to read so many books in 2024. Like
Yeah.
everyone's making those videos on YouTube, which is amazing, of course. But I just want to add that there's no compulsion. Like you don't have to reach a certain goal when it comes to reading books. You don't have to go and read like 100 books, or you have to finish one book a week, or read. I saw some videos where people shared that they read 721 books this year.
Is that even possible?
Yeah,
I
I
don't
was
think
like,
it's
how is
possible.
that possible? It's just, anyway. So I think reading should come from the heart.
And read for yourself.
And you read for yourself. You
Read
don't
for
read.
yourself.
Like, and even if you're reading to, I don't know, maybe improve your critical thinking skills, for example, or maybe to
Yeah, like
improve your
as-
English. Like,
Since we're TEFL
yeah,
tutors,
because
do
we have students from all over the world,
Yeah.
and I always ask them to read as much as they can, and by that I don't mean that read a lot.
Yeah,
You have to enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Otherwise it makes no sense.
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
good to like pick up certain things and then let go of them. The way you see yourself as a reader, and that's never going to stay the same. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
can
I
say
feel that every year you will be a different sort of a reader.
Yeah.
Like how we were this year, I'm sure next year we will be a different sort of a reader.
Yeah.
It won't be the same.
Yeah.
It won't be same. It's just like life, I think.
Yeah.
I think
Again,
reading-
we're going off on a very different
Okay.
tangent. So let's wrap this up. Thank you so much, everybody
Thank you
who
so
has
much for
stayed.
being here.
And we'll definitely do more of this. And for everybody who wants to have access to the chat and more recommendations, again, I will be making a list, and I will send the link on Instagram to anybody who wants to watch this. So thank you so much.
And yeah, I hope you all have
have a
a
good-
Merry Christmas
Yes.
and a very, very, very Happy New Year.
Very happy New Year, considering all the books we
Books
spoke
we
about in
mentioned,
this
yeah.
stream.
And that is why we will see you all now straight in 2024.
Yeah,
Not
the coming Sunday.
Yeah, because it's when is the 31st?
I think it's Sunday.
It's Sunday only.
Sunday,
Okay,
exactly.
okay. So we'll do it in Jan only.
Yeah. All right. And if you want to see more of us in terms of like more video content, more reading updates, like vlogs, but not like vlogs the way YouTube does vlogs, our kind of vlogs, you can become a reader members both on YouTube and on Patreon. The links are on our channel, so you can just go there and see whichever level you guys are comfortable with.
Yeah.
So you all will be able to see us more. And okay.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
so
for
much.
being here, and have a lovely day, have a lovely weekend, and we shall speak to you guys soon.
All right.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.